under the plan, Californians who already own gasoline cars will be allowed to keep them.
Yeah.
Oh, nice, huh?
Yeah.
This really is America.
There are so many holes in this thing.
But to double that percentage in 3 years' time, and I think that's absolutely crazy. It's wacky.
I just don't see it happening.
Yeah. This is America on the Road, named Best Radio Show by the International Automotive Media Conference, and now in its 27th year on the air. Thanks for being with us as we bring you the latest automotive information from around the world. California's decision to ban the sales of gasoline-powered cars after 2035 has gotten a lot of headlines, but there's much more to the story than just the headlines, and we'll tell you all about it. We have an expert who can tell you about that. Maybe a couple experts, really. Will self-driving cars go on sale to the public soon? Some bold predictions have been made about autonomous cars. Now a major automaker is saying, not so fast. We'll tell you all about that and add our commentary coming up. And another major car maker has just started to build electric vehicles in an American factory. I'll tell you all about that and how it fits or doesn't fit into the new green vehicle push. America on the Road is brought to you by Mercury Insurance and DrivingToday.com. If you're looking to save some money, you should switch to Mercury for your auto and home insurance. Californians save an average of $670 with Mercury. So imagine how much you could save. Get a quote today at drivingtoday.com/auto insurance. That's drivingtoday.com/auto-insurance. We love hyphens on this show, Matt. I'm Jack Nerad. With me is guest host Matt DeLorenzo. Of course, Matt has been on the show before. He is an automotive expert and has a new book out. It's called How to Buy an Affordable Electric Car, a Tightwad's Guide to EV Ownership. I can attest to the fact that Matt's maybe a little bit of a tightwad, but he's a great guy and so knowledgeable. Matt, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Glad to be here, Jack.
You're coming to us, I think, from Michigan today, right? I mean, you get around just like America on the Road.
Yeah, I used to live here for about 19 years and have a lot of friends, and I'm actually back here on vacation for a little golf. So
yeah, I like that.
Yep.
Good for you. Good for you. Well, smack them straight if you can. It seems
Yeah.
impossible to me. What vehicle will you be talking about on this week's show?
I had the opportunity to drive the new Lexus RX, which is, sort of the progenitor of the crossover luxury SUV, and really an interesting vehicle. A lot to say about that.
Yeah, well, I had a chance to drive it too, and I love your take on it. We can swap stories about that. I also got the chance to drive the Lincoln Navigator Black Label this week. It's a massive and massively comfortable luxury SUV, and it's stuffed with tech, so I hope I'll have enough time to talk about all that tech. We have a great guest for you as well. Melvyn Bautista is Hyundai Product Planning Manager and an expert on the 2023 Hyundai Palisade, and both Matt and I had a chance to drive that recently, too, in Asheville, North Carolina, so we'll talk about that. But before we do anything else, we're going to be bringing you some of the most important auto information from around the world. So stay with us with Matt DeLorenzo. This is Jack Nerad with you. And thanks so much for being with us right here on America on the Road. Welcome back to America on the Road with Matt DeLorenzo, Jack Nerad with us. Chris T can't be with us this week, but we have Matt with us, and Matt and I have kind of been traveling on the same road recently, driving the same cars and doing that kind of stuff. Of course, we worked together for a long time, so it's great to have Matt on the show. Thanks for being with us.
Good to be here, Jack.
We got a ton of interesting news to talk about, and I really, for one reason, you're an expert on electric cars because you've written this book, among other things, but certainly you've been following the scene forever and ever and ever, and lived in California, lived in the Detroit area as well. I know the industry as well as anybody. This California Air Resources Board ban of the sale of new gas-powered vehicles, that's the big headline. I think there's a lot of nuance to this that needs to be talked about, though, and let's dive into that. What do you think is the most important part of this whole edict?
Well, I think the thing is that it's not a ban on the sale of internal combustion engine vehicles. It's a requirement that the vehicles that are sold are zero emission, and that can mean a lot of things. they 20% of the vehicles sold under this so-called ban or edict could be plug-in hybrids with an internal combustion engine. So, there's a lot of nuance here. We don't know if manufacturers will be able to buy ZEV credits to continue sales of cars. There are so many holes in this thing. I think as we move closer to that magic 2035 date, you're going to see a lot of changes to this so-called ban on gas-powered vehicles. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I don't see it happening, number one. And here's one of the major reasons I don't see it happening. Within this new regulation, 35% of new passenger vehicles sold would need to be powered by batteries or by hydrogen by 2026. We're not talking, when people see the headline 2035, oh, that's a whole different decade. I can't even picture that. But 2026 is right around the corner, and those cars are developed and ready and basically set for sale. So to have manufacturers change that around to go from, I think in California, it might be 15 or 16% are battery electric vehicles, which is much higher than in the rest of the country. But to double that percentage in 3 years' time, and I think that's absolutely crazy. It's wacky.
Well, I think that's the real problem, is that they leave the market out of the equation. They automatically assume that this is going to happen. And if the market doesn't respond in the way that they've predicted, they're going to throw dealers out of work. They're going to rise, the price of new cars are going to skyrocket in California. And there are going to be a lot of voters who are going to vote a lot of people out of office, and things will change.
Right. Well, and the price of used cars, the price of used gasoline cars is going to go through the roof too. I think this is, I found this very funny. Under the plan, Californians who already own gasoline cars will be allowed to keep them. Oh, nice, huh?
Yeah.
This really is America then. We're allowed to keep them. But I should backtrack a little bit and go over some more of these percentages. 51% of the cars sold in California are supposed to be zero emission by 2028. So more than half that are being sold. Good luck on that. 68% by 2030, and then 100% by 2035. I mean, as a longtime observer of this industry, Matt, what's your take on that?
Well, I think there's, again, a lot of loopholes in there. If you buy a car out of state or move into state, a new car, you're going to be allowed to register and use it. So, again, I think there's going to be some court cases coming out of it. This is really going to impact new car dealers. So there's just too many things going on too quickly for the market to digest, and I think it will have to change at some point.
Yeah, I really think this is political posturing more than anything else. I mean, the politicians who are putting that out there now won't have to answer in 2035, but they probably will have to answer in 2026.
Yes.
If one hasn't run for president already.
Right.
We'll see what happens there. Well, another thing we alluded to earlier in the show is this thing about self-driving vehicles. Of course, there's a lot of brave talk about autonomous vehicles hitting the road soon and all of that. We see some semblance of self-driving in things like GM Super Cruise. We talked about that on the show recently. But that's really level 2 versus level 4 or 5 kind of autonomous driving. Now I think there's a voice of sanity where the folks at Toyota recently had kind of a seminar about future product and said, hey, we don't think that self-driving is going to be there for years and years and years. What's your take on that, Matt?
I couldn't agree more. I think they were saying by 2030 we were going to have level 5 autonomous cars. I think the problem is that people tend to lump together driver assists or assisted driving with autonomous driving, and they're two different things. And I think there's nothing wrong with being able to take your hands off the wheel or getting warnings or steering assist. That's all part of like situational awareness or helping the driver not get into trouble. Having the vehicle completely drive without any input from a human is a totally different subject. And unfortunately, everybody's seen the path to autonomous as going through the assisted driving channel, and they're two different things. So I think reality is setting in that it's much more difficult to teach a machine how to drive than it is to teach a person how to drive.
Yeah. And especially in all situations, right? I mean,
Correct.
Human judgment is reacting to a lot of things, and you can say what you will about drivers and their judgment, but most of the people are doing most of the things right most of the time, right? And to get a machine to do something like a four-way stop, I just don't know how they do it.
Yeah.
I think the cars would be stalled there for hours on end, and unless somebody needs to break a rule a little bit to get that log jam to stop, right?
If people were as bad drivers as the proponents of autonomous cars say they are, the carnage on the roads today would be unacceptable. I mean, it's still bad. I mean, granted, but the number has stayed fairly stable, about 40,000 fatalities a year forever. And you think of the miles driven and the number of situations that people are in, I think most drivers do a pretty remarkable job of not running into each other.
Yeah, I do too. And I drive in Southern California freeway traffic all the time, multi-lanes, and I'm always boggled by how everybody's avoiding running into everybody else, which is a really good thing. So, maybe go a little slower on this autonomous driving thing. Well, Mercedes-Benz is the manufacturer that is now building EVs in the United States. And I think, a couple months ago, they probably thought, wow, this is a really good idea. We're going to build these vehicles close to the market in which they're going to sell a lot of them. But now, because of the new rules about content within the EVs, this might not even be necessarily a great thing for them. I mean, what's your take overall on what's going to happen here with manufacturing? It's kind of convoluted now, isn't it?
It really is. And I think there's a lot of manufacturers like Mercedes and others who feel kind of had by the Inflation Reduction Act that changed. The rules were fairly stable for a long period of time about who qualified for the credits, how much they would get. They had a cap of 200,000 units. Well, they lifted that 200,000 unit cap, but the vehicles have to be built in the U.S. So automatically there are some affordable EVs out there like the Hyundai Kona, the Kia Niro, no longer eligible for the tax credits. The other part of it is the cap on the cost of the car. So any car costing more than $55,000 is not eligible, and any truck or SUV costing more than $80,000 is not eligible. And guess where Mercedes, which would be eligible if they built the car here in the U.S., it's going to probably fall outside those parameters and not be eligible for the tax break.
Well, and there's also eligibility of the buyer, right? And what their income is. And I've gone on record many times as not favoring any kind of tax credits for anybody or anybody and anything. I don't want to have tax credits for corporations or individuals of any way, shape, or form. Let the market decide and let people vote with their dollars about what they want to buy and how much they want to pay. And I think that works the best for everybody. It's just one man's opinion on all of that.
I know. But as a shameless person who took a $7,500 tax credit on my Leaf, thank you, America.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Thanks to that, sales clerk and the guy who's driving a truck to subsidize that purchase. Don't feel guilty, man. I understand.
I won't.
I understand. And when it just shows you when there's free money, it's hard not to say, hey, I'm going to reach in and grab some.
But, again, that shows that the disparity between buying a gas car and electric at this point, that $7,500 is the tipping point. And if you want EV adoption, that premium has to go away somehow, either through a tax rebate or lower costs. And we haven't seen lower costs yet.
Right. Absolutely true. Well, when we come back, we will be reviewing some cars, including the very important 2023 Lexus RX that both Matt DeLorenzo and I got a chance to drive. And I'll be driving and talking about the Lincoln Navigator as well. So stay with us for that with Matt DeLorenzo. This is Jack Nerad with you. And thanks so much for being with us right here on America on the Road. Welcome back to America on the Road with Matt DeLorenzo. This is Jack Nerad with you, and it's road test time on America on the Road. And we have an important vehicle for Lexus, for Toyota, for the world in terms of where the market is going. The Lexus RX is all new for 2023. Both Matt DeLorenzo and I have driven it fairly recently. What's your take on this vehicle, Matt?
It's a very important vehicle, as you mentioned. I mean, it sort of created this crossover luxury SUV segment. And the new RX goes back to its roots. They dropped the L, the 3-row version, and they just have a 2-row version. It's really, I would say the styling is pretty good, but there's still some people who may be a little polarized by the front end spindle grille. It's still a massive big grille, so you'll see.
There's a lot of styling in that car, isn't there?
There sure is.
Yeah.
You'll notice one when it's coming up behind you on the highway, but it's really well executed. There are no fewer than 4 different powertrains available. 3 at launch. They have a gas in both front and all-wheel drive, a hybrid, which will come in all-wheel drive, and then a sort of a more powerful hybrid.
Yeah, they call it a performance hybrid, right?
The RX 500H, and then they're going to have a plug-in hybrid. So there's going to be actually 4 engines, drivetrain combinations to choose from. Now my favorite one was the gas one. I like hybrids. The 500 hybrid performance one is a terrific car. It has a 6-speed automatic transmission in place of the CVT, so it drives more like a regular car. The hybrid still uses a CVT, and I'm not a big CVT fan, so the acceleration feels a little lazy. It's just not as sharp or as much fun to drive as the 500. But the gas version with all-wheel drive, that's the one to get. It has, really good power. You get the all-wheel drive version, and then you'll avoid things like a little bit of torque steer, and then the extra traction from the rear wheels being engaged actually sharpens up the handling. And that was the car that I was happiest in. The 500, though, I tell you, they have a noise canceling system in it. It's much quieter, much more luxurious, but I'm sure you're going to pay a hefty premium to go with that model over the gas version.
Yeah, they really did not have pricing about any of these vehicles. They also don't think that the performance version, it's in a lot of ways going to be a halo for the brand, right? Or for that particular model, as opposed to a lot of volume. I think they're talking about 5% of the volume being that model, where it's close to 70%, I think, will be the basic conventional gas version of this vehicle.
Right. The other thing I didn't like about the vehicle is its over-reliance on touchscreen for certain things like driving modes. I'm a big button fan, or even having the buttons, even if they're on a touchscreen, accessible. And I think they made a big mistake in not being able to switch the car from like a power to an economy mode or sport mode with just a touch of a button. You actually have to take your eyes off the road and dig through a couple of screens on the display, and that's a big distraction and something they really need to rethink. I understand why they're actually doing all these touch screens is a lot cheaper. But I think from a driver distraction point of view, I just rather have more conventional controls.
Well, and I think in particular for a Lexus RX driver, right? Not necessarily spring chickens here, although they are going after millennials as opposed to the older crowd. I mean, it's basically been a baby boomer mobile for a long, long time. And, the 800-pound gorilla in that segment forever and ever. But I think those folks like buttons. Those folks don't want to wade through a lot of screens. It's, as you say, kind of distracting. And I noticed a few fumbles in this Toyota designed infotainment system that I hadn't noticed before. I think overall it's a big advantage versus what they've had before, but there's still a few kind of fumbles in it, I think.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is that they can pursue younger buyers. I don't have a problem with that. But I think a lot of manufacturers missed the boat that there are some vehicles that are life stage vehicles, and that older, those millennials are going to be our age at some point, and they're still going to want to buy
If they're
cars, and
lucky.
if they're lucky. So, this sort of relentless pursuit of going after, trying to be young and hip and doing things that make the vehicle not as convenient to use for all people is I think they're chasing. I think they're chasing the wrong objective here. I think what they should try to do is make a vehicle that's engaging to drive, easy to use, and really looks good, and it'll appeal to everybody.
Right. Well, and I think they've largely done so with the RX. I really do like the vehicle. Maybe we're being a little negative about things, but I think in terms of the overall driving situation, it drives just really, really well in all of the configurations. And
you can get
it's certainly
it in
one you
copper.
have to consider if you're in that market, right?
Right, and you can get it in copper. What did
Boy,
you think of
can
that?
ya? I mean,
that signature color
at the event where they were showing them, it's like, wow, here's a bunch of copper, and I think maybe that's way too out there for this particular market, but I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's a surprising thing, our color choices, that manufacturers are trying to stand out from each other and get away from the silver, black, white, gray palette. So I give them
which
credit
is
for
what
that.
apparently people want. Right? I mean, that's
True.
what people are buying. So, but overall, what's your take before we start talking about Lincoln
I
Navigator?
think they've done an excellent job. Toyota's build quality, the powertrains, the comfort, and the convenience of using the vehicle is right there, and it's another home run for them.
Yeah, I think they'll sell a ton of them, and that is really the Lexus franchise. So congratulations for them on getting that right. And we're talking about another luxury SUV right now, and it is the Lincoln Navigator. I was driving a black label version, and of course you drove its sister version, the Ford Expedition, and talked about it on a recent show. But they've kind of gone out of their way, I think, to differentiate Lincoln Navigator from Expedition, which kind of makes sense. They're charging a lot more money, and it's competing against different vehicles, including in some ways the RX. Maybe not directly with the RX, but certainly in the luxury area. And so it too has a major grille. I guess if you're going to be a luxury brand, you have to have just an oppressively large grille, right? It's just got to be way in your face. I think in the Lincoln though, it looks pretty good actually. It kind of is pleasing to the eye. They have projector headlamps next to it, 3D tail lamps, which I kind of like the depth in the tail lamp, all that kind of stuff. But it's hard not to dive into all the tech that's on the Navigator, because those are many of the differentiating features of this, big 3-row truck-based SUV. It's based basically on the Ford F-150 pickup truck platform. It offers Active Glide, which is their version of GM Super Cruise, and allows it to, I guess it's basically a level 2 system. It allows the vehicle to do some steering, including hands-off, and accelerate and decelerate on its own. But you have to be paying attention, and it's looking at you, just as the RX was looking at your eyes. If you kind of were sightseeing, it was kind of giving you a little, nudge, hey, do something about this, or a little note. So that's in the Navigator. It works quite well. Again, you kind of have to jump off the pier and trust it. But what's your take on these kind of level 2 self-driving systems like Super Cruise and Active Glide?
I think it's like an extension of active cruise control. And I'm not a big cruise control. I like driving the car. So, but I have noticed a difference in, especially the speed sensitive ones. It does reduce a little bit of driver fatigue. I just don't. you got to rest your hands somewhere. So why don't you rest them on the wheel?
Yeah.
I still
and
don't
if you
get
got to
the
pay
whole
attention, why don't you pay attention
Right.
and then
Yeah, you
actually
got to
drive the
drive
car?
anyway. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And you're more likely to drift off if you're not, your hands aren't on the wheel or somehow you're engaged with the vehicle.
Yeah.
So some people may like it. It's like cruise control. It's fine. They're expensive. You're going to spend a lot of money for them. And they're somewhat limited in what they can do and the number of miles. Now, Super Cruise has said that they've just doubled from 200,000 to 400,000 miles of road, but primarily they're good for freeway trips. So
yeah, and certainly the Navigator's Active Glide system is that way.
Right.
They haven't expanded the way GM Super Cruise has. This also has the Navigator has Sync 4. Their infotainment system, pretty good, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which I like, and which is not as prevalent as you would think. They have designed the interface to look different because it's in a luxury vehicle. So it's the Sync 4 behind the scenes, but it has what they call the Constellation visible design. Big screens, 13.2 center stack screen, kind of almost overpowering. But it has some dedicated buttons too, so, within the car for controls. So I like that. It has Alexa built in, so Alexa's eavesdropping on you, and Fire TV, so the folks in the back seat can watch movies, stream movies and do that kind of stuff. It has this is a kind of a mind-blowing audio system, Matt. The Revell Ultima audio system has 28 speakers.
Wow.
I mean, that's like beyond belief, isn't it? I mean, 28 speakers.
Yeah, can't count them all.
Yeah.
But
where do they put them all?
Yeah, I do give Lincoln and even Cadillac credit because they have spent the money you need to make the interior different than the other divisions' siblings in that segment, and they can do it at a price that may be stupefying when you look at the bottom line, but compared to like a Range Rover or a Mercedes, they're offering every bit the amount of luxury in those vehicles at a significant savings.
Yeah, I mean, and you're getting just a ton of metal. You're getting a ton of car. Or a couple tons probably, or close to 3 tons of car. It has plenty of power. I haven't talked about the driving experience very much because it's kind of secondary to the tech in a lot of ways. It drives just fine. Very, very comfortable. It's a separate body and frame vehicle, so there's nice isolation. 440 horsepower from a twin-turbo V6 engine, not a V8 engine. 510 pound-feet of torque, so plenty of torque. Not the most agile of vehicles, but more agile than you would guess. Overall, I think this is a very good value, and I think Lincoln has done a good job with it. It's kind of revamping. They're building on a good chassis, has good safety equipment. I think overall, quite a good value and very differentiated, I think, from the Ford Expedition that you talked about a few weeks ago.
Yep. So it's our modern limousine.
Absolutely true.
And I think that's why people buy them. Comfortable ride, very quiet, great for families.
Right. Well, when we come back, we will have a great guest for you. Melvyn Bautista is the Hyundai Product Planning Manager. He's the expert on the 2023 Hyundai Palisade that both Matt and I drove in Asheville, North Carolina recently. So stay with us for that interview with Matt DeLorenzo. This is Jack Nerad with you, and thanks so much for being with us right here on America on the Road. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road. Jack Nerad with you. We're in Asheville, North Carolina, with a great guest. Melvyn Bautista is a product planning manager with Hyundai, driving a really cool vehicle. And I'm proud to say I was here for the launch of the Palisade. Now I am for kind of the revamp of the Palisade. Let's talk a bit about the midsize Hyundai Palisade.
Yeah, so we have it's a mid-cycle refresh, and as you mentioned, a few years ago we launched the vehicle. It was a new vehicle in the segment. It got raving reviews, and we had a great product, and we made it even better for 2023.
You were entering a new segment for you with this vehicle. As recently as 10 years ago, you didn't have very many SUVs at all, very many crossovers. You really joined that parade with a lot of vehicles, and this is certainly an important one. This is an important segment, isn't it?
Yes, it is. You know, the midsize SUV segment is a very mature segment, a very large segment. It does about 1.8 million units a year, and it's expected to hold that amount. And so we're really looking forward to that with the new Palisade.
And you were a newcomer, really. I mean, Ford Explorer had dominated this segment. Nissan Pathfinder's in the segment, Honda Pilot, Toyota Highlander. I mean, it's a pretty daunting competition, right?
Yes.
You came in and got some volume right away. How do you think you were able to do that?
Well, you know what? It's very interesting. You know, when we took a look at some of our owner data, one of the things that stood out was the fact that the Palisade was not the #1 vehicle of their choice. Mainly it was the Pilot, the Highlander, the Explorer, as you mentioned. But I think what they ended up seeing was just the value of the equipment that you're getting. There's so many high-tech features, so many features that aren't even offered in the segment that we have on the Palisade. And so it really gives it a very unique position, more of the upper echelon.
Yeah, it's kind of premium, isn't it?
It's very premium.
In a lot of ways, there's premium content even in the mid-level.
Yeah.
And then when you get up to the calligraphy level, the height, really high level, there's some stuff that you just absolutely can't get in the competition.
Yeah,
correct?
and you know, one of the great things with the Palisade is we've been really successful in selling our upper calligraphy or our upper limited trims, which means that it's got all the great content. It's got all the bells and whistles that we're marketing and advertising. So it really puts it in a unique position when you compare it to everybody else.
Yeah. Well, new stuff for 2023. It's on the market now. Tell us a bit about the stuff you're most excited about. With this
Yeah,
device.
one of my favorite ones is what we call the digital key. So it's the second generation. It's our digital key 2 touch is what we're calling it. And really the biggest thing that you're getting here is the compatibility with the iPhone. So with the digital key, you actually don't need your phone. I'm sorry, you don't need your key fob, right? Your phone is your key. And so you're able to enter the vehicle, you're able to put it on the wireless charger and start the vehicle on its own. But the other great thing is, if you're familiar with the Apple Wallet or Samsung Pass, it uses that technology where you just get your phone and you hold it up against the door handle and it'll unlock it.
So is that near-field communication? Is that
It is near-field communications. And you know, one of the other interesting things is when you have this digital key, you're able to, I can text you access to the vehicle. I can set restrictions. I can have.
And then you can play a joke on me and have me drive somewhere and then turn it off.
Yes.
I'll have to hitchhike home. Right?
Yeah, and in addition to that, one of the other cool features is the remote smart parking assist, right? And so what that is through the key fob or the digital key app, you're able to, outside of the vehicle, park in and out of a parking spot. So if you've got a really tight spot, it's a
you
big
see
car.
one of those compact spaces,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And it can be tough to open the doors in those kind of spaces.
Yes.
So that makes a lot of sense. You can get out of the car. It will drive in, at your command.
Yes.
And then you can stop it and reverse the process when it comes time to leave.
Yeah.
So that's pretty exciting stuff. You've done some stuff in terms of creature comforts, right?
Yes.
I mean, third row creature comforts, for example. I mean, that strikes me as pretty cool for that third row, kind of the neglected third row folks, right?
Yeah, so the Palisade is our flagship SUV. So that's where we throw everything. And really, the big focus is convenience, but passenger convenience. Because of it's a family-oriented vehicle, you're putting a lot of people in the vehicle. You've got things like first, second, and third row heated seats that are available. You've got ventilated seats that are in the first and second. You've got USB-C charge ports on both sides of the third row seat. So it's really just giving the people in the vehicle as much access and connectivity with really comfort and convenience. And then their smartphone as well.
Yeah, and connectivity. Wi-Fi hotspot for the first time, I think, in this vehicle.
Yes, it is
important, right?
It is for Hyundai, and it's a great thing because it really fits in with our target audience for the Palisade. And the great thing is with the Wi-Fi hotspot, we offer a free trial. In addition to that, it's $20 a month through Verizon. And so, say you're going on a trip for a week, you could activate it, for 1 month and pay $20, and then just deactivate it when you're done. You get the kids quiet while you're on your road trip.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Well, we talked a lot about what's inside the vehicle, but this is a refresh, and it has a different look, and kind of more of a family resemblance, and I think a kind of a more vibrant exterior too. Tell us about that.
Yeah, the main thing you'll see on the Palisade you're going to notice is the front grille area. It's much more prominent. It gives it a very premium on-road presence. just by the wide kind of stance that it looks. And then the overhang, we made it a little bit longer in the front to give it more of a long, kind of luxurious look.
Yeah. Is there a little bit of jealousy with the way people seem to favor the Kia Telluride styling? Essentially the same vehicle under the skin. I think there's a lot to like about the Palisade. I kind of gravitated to the Palisade right away, but a lot of people were going Telluride. I think maybe this puts you in a better position.
No, and I think one of the major differences that we hear from the journalists and from media and everybody is from the design itself, right? Hyundai is, in my opinion, it's more classy, it's more luxurious, it's more of an upscale vehicle. Whereas a Telluride, it's a little bit more clear they're going for more of the off-road rugged type, buyer and whatnot. And so I think that's where we have a really clear distinction. But in addition to that, we're also adding other things as well, just to take away a little bit of that luxury kind of too flashy look and give it more of a toned down or kind of an even keeled kind of look. We are introducing a new trim called the XRT. And it's an exterior appearance package that gives basically a blackout appearance. With the black wheels,
it's good looking.
Yeah,
it really is good looking.
Yeah, and it's to give it a more of a rugged appearance for the ones that want that look, right? And so
But it's really kind of more of an on-road package than an off-road package, right? Some of these packages, or at least quasi-off-road. This has 20-inch wheels, for example. I think it does.
Yes.
And that kind of stuff. That's kind of appearance and cool appearance, right?
Yes, it is. It is meant as an appearance. So from a mechanical standpoint, it's not. You're not going to get that kind of capability.
Yeah.
As is with some of the other.
Although today we did a bit of off-road. I wouldn't say heavy off-road, but we did some off-roading with essentially the standard vehicles. I think I was in a calligraphy model.
Yes.
For example. So there's some capability there, right?
Yeah, with Hyundai, with the Palisade, we have our advanced H-Track all-wheel drive system. So it is very capable. Like you said, we took some very light off-roading. It was probably, a good 12, 15-mile course that took about an hour. But it was very slow, going over some pretty aggressive, potholes and bumps and things in that nature. And it performed really well.
Got the tires dirty, that's for sure. That's for sure. What's the mix like? I mean, Hyundai is a value brand.
Yes.
At the same time, kind of premium at the same, which maybe is in some ways contradictory, but in your case, it doesn't seem to be, right?
No.
So tell us about it.
Yeah, one of the things that's really gotten me excited is, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, the mix of the vehicles that we're selling, it's a very high price point. It's actually among the leaders in the segment in terms of the actual price that customers are paying for the vehicle. And the interesting thing is, over 70% is over $45,000 of the total purchase price. Now, mind you, with everything going on today, but it's still above everybody else in the segment when you compare that. And so what that's telling me is basically, the customers are recognizing that the great value, the safety features, the technology, the styling, everything in the vehicle is very well packaged.
Yeah, I think when you're all in and you're around $50,000 or right around that, I think with a calligraphy model, with all the stuff, and including a bunch of stuff that you can't get on a lot of the competitors, Napa leather and some really upscale kind of stuff.
One of my favorite feature is the Ergo Motion driver's massaging seat. So I went to Las Vegas recently with the family, and it's a great feeling because there's little air pockets in the cells in your pelvic and lumbar area, and it basically just applies pressure as you're driving, like you're getting a little massage, like a massaging chair. Mm-hmm. And it also does it with the bolsters as well. So it gives you, your whole body just get the blood flowing, when you're going on
I was
trips.
driving today with my co-driver, he said suddenly it started to massage him. Does that happen? I mean, does it understand that maybe you need a little?
It does. So there's what we're calling it is a smart posture support. So basically, what that is if you're familiar with the lumbar, right? And so so the side bolsters, you have the ability to fold them in and out. But in addition to that, if you're driving for a long amount of time, or you speed up, or you put it into the sport drive mode, it'll automatically pull in the bolsters a little bit just to kind of
keep you in place.
Keep you in place. Yeah.
What is your favorite feature, and maybe or a favorite new feature of the 2023?
You know what? There's really two things, because I find myself every time I'm in the Palisade, I'm with my family, right? And so obviously the main thing for me is safety. So there's two really big things is what we call the blind view monitor. So it uses the same systems as the 360 surround view monitor, but when you do your turn signal on the dash, you get a video feed of your blind spot. And it's really nice in the sense that it just gives you an idea of what's behind you, right? That you can't see. So it really helps out. And then the other thing, like I said, especially going to Las Vegas, we have a new our highway driving assist system, which integrates the smart cruise control. So it's adaptive. You have the ability to stop and go depending what the car, it'll automatically stop and go. But in addition to that, there's some additional hardware that gives sensors, that gives other safety functions that will apply brakes, that will slow the vehicle down, that will help steering assist. You even get steering wheel vibrations as well, just to let you know you're veering out of your lane, there's a car coming into you. But at the same time, this is all being done with cruise control. And it's automatically steering, it's automatically speeding up, slowing down, changing lanes. One of the cool things is there's an automatic lane change assist. So if you're in cruise control, you flip your right signal. If it's clear, the vehicle's going to automatically lane change, and then you just go on driving.
Go on driving.
Yeah.
Just as if no. And there is also some support at intersections, right? I mean, intersections are really pretty dangerous. That's largely where danger lies for a lot of driving. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that involves our forward collision avoidance assist system. So it's basically the emergency braking system, right? And so what we've done is we've enhanced that, again, with additional hardware like front radars, front corner radars, rear corner radars. What that does basically is it's basically another set of eyes for you all around your vehicle. And so it's detecting and taking a look of everything that's going on around you and trying to keep you, if you're making a left on an intersection, what we call junction turning, the vehicle has the ability to stop. There's also junction crossing. So if someone's crossing, very quickly, you don't see them in the corner of your eye, the vehicle is going to detect that, provide a warning, and apply the brakes if needed. So it's a very intelligent system in that way that you kind of have an angel over your shoulder trying to help you.
Yeah, I mean, that can be life-saving. I mean,
Yes.
we had a tragic incident very similar to that happened in Los Angeles fairly recently and got a lot of publicity. Give our listeners, as we're winding down here, some sense of the price range of Palisade for 2023, because you start at a pretty value price, and then even at the high end, it's not really expensive in the overall scheme.
Yeah, so our SE trim model starts a little bit under $35,000, and then it tops out at about $50,000 once you get the full bells and whistles, and then that's for the front wheel drive model. And then we also have the H-Track all wheel drive as a standalone option. On all the trims.
And how much does that cost? How much is this?
I believe I want to say it's $1,900 for the walk to a 4-wheel drive. Equipment is basically the same between front wheel drive and all-wheel drive.
Yeah, so you can add that all-wheel drive if you want, depending on where you live and whether that would be useful or not on any of the trims. And there's a lot of trims to choose from. What do you think is the sweet spot? Is it the SEL trim? Is it the new trim?
I'll say in two ways. If you want a very good-looking car from the exterior, the XRT is the one to go. You like that sporty kind of unique look to it, or if you want more of the classy luxury look, the calligraphy. The top trim really, with all the features and the technology that's in there, that's really the best option because it really just opens it up for the driver, the passengers as well. Yeah,
it strikes me that a lot of consumers are voting for that one, right? I mean, it's probably a richer mix than in a lot of other versions of mid-size SUVs.
Yes. Yeah, no, definitely. And I think we're very fortunate because I think a lot of it has to do, with our owners. They purchased their vehicles with it being such a new vehicle in the segment. They're getting a lot of their information from online videos or third-party websites or consumer guides or vehicle reviews where they're highlighting all these features that are great that you don't see in any other vehicle in the segment.
Yeah, important stuff. Well, thanks so much for being with us, Melvyn Bautista of Hyundai, talking about the 2023 Hyundai Palisade.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back right here on America on the Road. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road with Matt DeLorenzo. This is Jack Nerad with you, and it is listener question time. Unfortunately, Chris T couldn't be with us this week, but Matt filling in so ably. Thanks so much for doing that, Matt. And I think we've got a great listener question for you, and I really want to hear your take on this. This comes from Rain in Richmond, Virginia. Do you think the Chinese car companies will ever enter the American market? I've been hearing about them for years now, but as far as I know, none of them have made a big attempt to sell cars here. Why is that? And will that change?
Well, they're here already through the back door. I mean, the Buick Envision and some Volvos come from China, but for the most part, they're not. I mean, they're going to get beaten to this market by the Vietnamese with VinFast. And I think the reason why is that a small country like Vietnam needs to export in order for their industry to thrive and survive. The Chinese market is so huge that I think that a lot of the makers there are serving that market rather than striking out in new markets like the US or Europe.
Yeah, I mean, this is a crowded market and kind of a mature market too, right? Where the Chinese are operating in somewhat of a third world, at least, or a really growing market. I mean, in our lifetime, we have seen the Chinese market overtake the American market as being the largest car market in the world by a lot of cars now, millions of units. And so I think it's probably easier for them to compete at home than it is over here. Also, I think there's still some quality questions about Chinese built cars, although maybe Buick has allayed some of those fears a bit with, the vehicle, like you say, that they've kind of brought in through the back door here. That's Chinese built. It seems just fine. We'll see what happens on that.
I think the other part of it is that they're building vehicles that aren't particularly attuned to the U.S. market now. They're very heavily into EVs. It's a big family car sedan market. That's where the Buick LeSabre has gone to die. So a lot of these cars that we no longer see here, big 5-passenger full-size cars that aren't being sold in the U.S. are actually thriving right now in China. So for them to try and come into a shrinking segment like that, it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't pencil for them.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense what you say. I was driving the Volvo S90 last week and reviewed it on the show or a couple of weeks ago. And that's a kind of a Chinese market with a huge back seat, a lot of rear seat area, and that exemplifies what they want in China. Many of those cars are driven by a chauffeur as opposed to driven by the owner, and that's a whole different thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess that's our show for the week, and it goes so fast. I love talking with you, Matt, about cars and about everything for that matter. Thanks so much for doing this with us. We appreciate it.
I'm really happy to be here. Thanks, Jack, for having me on.
And thanks so much for listening to America on the Road. We do appreciate that. Thanks to the SportsMap Radio Network stations for carrying America on the Road. And if you like America on the Road, pass it on to a friend who might like this show. We'd love that. And check us out on YouTube as well. You might enjoy that. For grins, for sure. So join us again next week for another edition of America on the Road.